This time on Whatever We Want, we talk about
Star Wars Rebels. We watched Star Wars Rebels for the first time ever leading up to Kenobi. Spoilers, major, huge big spoilers ahead for the entire show.
Big spoilers.
And a few other Star Wars properties. There are time codes down in the description if you'd like to jump around to different points in the episode. We talk everything from Dave Filoni's subtle influences to potential Kenobi tie-ins to overarching story arcs and everything in between. We are also joined by my old roommate, Matt, a true Star Wars aficionado. Thank you again for joining us, Matt. Hope you enjoy. Welcome back to Whatever You Want, where we review content across all mediums of media, movies, TV shows, video games, and beyond, to give you the most interesting behind-the-scenes insights, storytelling techniques, all that jazz, and more.
We cover everything from Disney, Marvel, Pixar, and more. Without further ado, let's jump right into the show.
Boosh! Main segment, here we are with Matt, the person that probably knows more Star Wars than me, if there's anyone on this earth. I'm just kidding, there's a lot of people on this earth, but you're the person I know
I'm
the
not
best.
sure about that.
No, definitely, Matt, you definitely do know more. Before we actually jump into things, I was thinking maybe we should talk about how we met, because I feel like that gives some credibility to our Star Wars knowledge.
I was about to say, Star Wars is really what brought us together.
Yeah. Do you want to elaborate?
Yeah.
We both went to college, we were roommates and stuff, but...
So Jake and I, we met at a Star Wars club meeting at Penn State.
It wasn't as nerdy as that. It was an ice cream social, so there was ice cream promised.
It's an ice cream social for Star Wars club. Like, it wasn't like it was some, like, really cool thing.
I thought it was cool. Ice cream and Star Wars? What else could you want?
What could be that? Yeah.
But yeah, so then I just heard Jake like talking to somebody else and like how he did cross country. I was like, oh, I did cross country too. And so I was like, oh, where are you from? And he's like, oh yeah, this town that's 5 minutes away from me.
Yeah, Matt
like,
literally lives closer to my high school than I do, but we didn't go to the same high school, like because you went to the Catholic school. I almost said Catholic college. The Catholic school.
Catholic college.
You went to the Catholic college,
No.
but also my college. You're going to two colleges at once.
Hey, I got to get that double degree.
The DD, people say. Yeah, so, but yeah, just so everyone, our street cred doesn't go away, we then proceed to never go to, like, we went to like one or two other meetings, but after that, we did not go to another Star Wars Club meeting. We got out of it what we wanted to. We met each other, became roommates for the next 3 years, and are here today to talk about Rebels, the show.
Yeah.
It all comes back full circle.
Exactly, yeah. Yeah, it's actually a really cool full circle moment, which there are a lot of themes about full circle and stuff in the show, which we'll talk about. But
True.
yeah, so just a little backstory again. Daniel and I have like never watched the show when it came out. I think what happened was I saw like a tweet or something like a couple months ago. It was like, if you watch one episode of Rebels every day from now until when Kenobi comes out, like it'll be exactly like one episode per day, and then you'll have the last episode right before Kenobi comes out. I was like, oh, that'd be cool. And then like, because I was like, I've never seen it, and I'm sure there might be some tie-ins and stuff. And then I just kind of got sucked in and watched the whole thing really
Binged
quick.
it, yeah.
Yeah, so we're just gonna kind of talk about our overall thoughts as like kind of first-time viewers, at least Daniel and I. Matt, I believe you have seen it before.
Yes, so I watched it in undergrad when I was procrastinating studying for finals. So
Nice. All right, I just want to start out overall. What do you guys think just overall as a series?
I thought that like when I first heard about the series, I thought that it was really stupid because I mean it first came out on like Disney XD, so I was just like, oh, this is gonna be some kid show. It's like I mean the Clone Wars started on Cartoon Network, but again, the Clone Wars came out when we were kids.
Yeah, that's true.
And so I thought that this would be like, oh, more pandering to that audience.
For the next generation.
Yeah.
Exactly. And so, I mean, eventually when I started watching it, it did kind of start out that way. And I think that's what it needed to be, just because you did have to get like kids onto it in order for it to be successful. But then I think it did kind of gain like more of like attraction and like a cult following, and especially as you progress to the later seasons,
it really evolved. I feel
they
like.
really do. They do touch on like some more darker elements, but I think overall they just kind of increased the depth of a lot of the characters, and they made it feel like this isn't just like a kid show. Like it's definitely
just a kid show. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, Daniel, what do you think? And also, I think we should recount Daniel's story of seeing when you watched this.
Okay, so I told the guys right before we started recording. So I was
let me set
night.
the tone. Let me set the tone. we Daniel and I both went on this journey together of like watching one episode of Rebels a day until watching before Kenobi, and then like as we were progressing, Daniel got like really far ahead. Like after like a week, he was like, "Yeah,
I
season
binged
1.
it like crazy."
And I was like, "What?" And I was like 3 episodes in. So I like caught up, and then we were kind of like, I was thinking, oh, it might be a cool episode for the podcast if we like kind of review our thoughts on Rebels like right before Kenobi comes out. And then I was like, "Are you gonna be good for that?" And he was like, "Oh yeah, for sure. Like I'm on season 2 already. Like what?" Back in like February. And then I kept like reminding him. I was like, Daniel, we got this coming up. You just got to make sure you finish watching this. He was like, "Yeah, I got it." Blah blah blah. And Daniel, tell your side of the story now.
Okay. So working late last night, and I we did a live Q&A yesterday for my studio because I got my own studio. I'm starting, so I'm a busy guy, and I forgot I needed to catch up on season 4. So I stayed up till like 8 last night.
Your excuse, I feel like a teacher. Your like excuse was like, I had a really busy like last night, Friday night. Well, I've given you 2 months to do the homework.
I know, but like,
and you're like, sorry, I had a busy Friday.
No, like legitimately, I've been busy like every day. It's crazy how much more time's been going into the game and stuff. But yeah, no, that's kind of, you have a good point there. I kind of did slack on that a little bit.
Okay, but in Daniel's defense, and in kind of, to help him out a little bit, when have we ever done our assignments early?
That's
exactly.
Yeah, but when your assignment is watching Star Wars, like I thought that would be a little different. Sorry.
I'm just trying to play devil's advocate.
Yeah, no,
trust me,
true.
I use Star Wars to procrastinate my other assignments.
Yeah, what do you procrastinate with your assignments when Star Wars is your assignment? You're just like, I'm lost. You just like implode. But yeah, what were your overall thoughts now that you have seen the whole series?
Oh, dude, it was amazing. Like I agree with Matt a lot too, where it started out more kiddie, It wasn't attracting like a wider Star Wars audience, right? Obviously, but like you started to see changes at the end of season 1, like that early on, which was good. But then it really started to get into those darker tones, like Matt said as well. Really, for the majority of the entirety of the series, so that was something that really had me. That's like, when I started watching it, started binging it. That's what got me going, seeing how things are starting to change and continue to see how things would grow. Also, just seeing like how different characters' stories continued. Whether it be like Maul or Ahsoka.
Yeah, I do want to talk about all the characters.
Like just more sort of like Mandalore. It was nice just seeing the expansion of all that and how it kind of like made sense, how it lined up before the actual rebellion became the Alliance and so on. So I thought it's like a prequel to the prequel to the OGs.
A rich tridge.
I was going to say prequel to prequel. No, that's not right.
I think just my overall thoughts. I again going into this, I think we all have the idea that like the perception we grew up with Clone Wars, so that's such a high bar to compare it to. So like I feel like if this had honestly come out like before Clone Wars, like it might have done like a lot better. Everyone's like, oh, this is the first Star Wars show it's about like Rebels. That'd be like kind of cool. And then you see Clone Wars, like, wow, this even elevates it. Because Clone Wars came first, I think it had a lot to live up to. That being said, though, it did turn me around. Like after I kind of got past the first season and seeing like the deeper arcs that they were going with, I think it had its good moments, but like again compared to Clone Wars, fell a little flat. But like it's not trying to be Clone Wars, so I have to kind of cut it some slack in that sense. And I also just like that it was like kind of new characters, which I do want to talk about, that all had like no backstory going into it. So you have to kind of build up those characters and their backstories a bit and like kind of flesh them out. So that's kind of an interesting challenge that the Clone Wars didn't really have to do, besides like Ahsoka a little bit. So it kind of had to change how the overall structure had to be built. Yeah, but so I'm gonna go through and talk about now the individual characters and just thoughts on all of them and like if we think we'll see them in the future, etc. So starting out, we've got the Rebels, the like just core team. Obviously Ezra. What do you think of Ezra as a character?
I really did like Ezra's character. I mean, at first he was kind of the spoiled brat. He's like, yeah, I can use the Force and I can be the best. But I think that's kind of like what you would expect to see. Because I mean, most of like Jedi training, they started really young so that they kind of build up that discipline. And I mean, Ezra was already like, I mean, he wasn't like ridiculously old, but he was still like an older kid. And I don't think like it's kind of like an Anakin situation where like Anakin got accepted really late and then he had problems with his discipline. Ezra had problems with his discipline as well.
That's a good comparison.
But I think overall he did like develop into the character very well and kind of became well-rounded. And we did get to see kind of like in later seasons him battling like the dark side and like trying to figure all of that out
while also trying to be a leader like for the rebellion and kind of coming into that role. I think it was also really cool balancing those two things.
And I just think it's kind of crazy like the amount of pressure that they put on like these kids essentially for these like huge commanding positions. Like, yeah, they have skills, but I mean, you saw more than once in Rebels how Ezra led missions terribly because he didn't stop to think of the bigger picture.
Right.
Yeah.
But they also like kind of have to do that and train the new generation because they're rebels. Like that's the point. The show is like building the early days of the rebellion. Like they didn't have all the experience or like a ton of people that they could rely on. So they had to like thrust these kids into these super positions of like higher responsibility that maybe they weren't ready for. It's interesting seeing how they kind of deal with that. I also really like just Ezra's arc starting out, like you said, like as this annoying kid, but kind of growing into a responsible Jedi. I think a lot of the characters in this show do a really good job of like an overarching kind of like story arc and like story that progresses throughout all 4 seasons and seeing their characters grow. I think that's like testament to a good story because like if at the end of season 4 Ezra's still like an annoying kid, I don't think anyone would be watching really.
No.
Daniel, do you have any thoughts on Ezra and then like kind of Kanan and their relationship?
Well, their relationship I found to be it was nice to see how Kanan was able to humble Ezra in a way, and like through time, like Ezra, like he always had that natural ability, and it was nice seeing how that duality also played out as well. Like Kanan was always like, I don't know if I can even teach him. I don't know if I can support him, and how there was that back and forth there. I think that was also a very important aspect.
That's a good point. I like how Kanan like doesn't seem like this surefire like I am the master, like I am 100% certain in my decisions. I feel like a lot of Jedi Masters were always like, you must obey me, like I know everything that's right. And Kanan's very open about like, I have no idea what the heck I'm doing. And I really like that he was like willing to learn from Ezra and like his time teaching. I think that was really cool dynamic.
And I definitely think that like in that perspective, like we kind of have a fuller picture now because we saw how Kanan like reacted to Order 66 with like his like small little scene in the Bad Batch.
Bad Batch, yeah.
But like beforehand, we kind of didn't know, and like that gives us more context that Kanan never even was a Jedi Knight. I mean, he was essentially just a Padawan and never reached that status in the Order.
Yeah, he was younger than Ezra, I think, when he like left the Order, really. So all of his teaching, he's teaching this kid that's older than him when he learned everything he knew, kind of thing. That's kind of got to be a weird mind thing, like do it like kind of really a huge imposter syndrome, like do I deserve to be teaching this kid really?
And I think that kind of like really came out especially like in their fights with the Inquisitors and how like while Kanan was somewhat able to hold his own, he got his butt kicked more than once. And then like seeing Ahsoka, who had more training, just kind of come in and like kick butt,
go to town,
like go 2v1 like And then, like, also, I just loved Kanan, like, getting blinded. Like, I mean, I didn't love he got blinded, but, like, just the idea of, like, one of your main characters just losing their sight for, like, half the series is kind of crazy. And just seeing how he would deal with that.
When you said that reminded me of the meme. It was like, I help blind kids, and it's just, like, somebody pouring, like, bleach in the kid's eyes.
What?
It was, like, the cyanide happiness joke.
What memes are you looking at?
Daniel, this is a kid show.
I don't know why. It just made me think of that. Again, I'm in delirious mode right now.
Dang. Well, before we jump back, I forgot to mention, Matt, you got a Star Wars shirt. I appreciate you repping the Star Wars
I got
today.
this. I mean, it's a cool little space shirt until you don't know what else comes.
That's
look
no
at
moon.
that.
Yeah, I've got I tried to do Rebels colors. Like I made my light orange, and I'm wearing like an orange-ish yellow shirt. And like, yeah, Rebels are orange. I don't know. That was
I have the white from Ahsoka.
Yeah, you always have that. Unless we film at night.
See, he's just been that prepared. He's been preparing for this episode for weeks.
Exactly.
I foresaw it
till last night or this morning.
It was a vision. I just knew.
Dang. Yeah. What do you guys think of then the rest of the like Rebels cast? Like Hera, we've got Sabine and Zeb. Chopper.
I do think that it was kind of nice that we got to see a bunch of different, like it was kind of like the ragtag crew.
All different backgrounds.
We got a little bit more with like of Hera's backstory through kind of like the last season of Clone Wars.
Yeah.
I mean, even before like that edition in the last season, we didn't kind of know all that much about any of these characters.
I think the first season we didn't, but I think they kind of expanded upon it. Like we got some episodes with like Sabine and Mandalore, and then Zeb like leading the Lasats to like his home world. And so like it touched a little bit upon it, and like kind of what I was talking about earlier, like them fleshing out their backstories. But again, like we didn't know too much. And I think that kind of worked.
And I think that kind of worked also just with like the whole theme of the show. Like you started out with like these kind of quote unquote rebels that nobody had even heard of before. And kind of like when the show takes place, like there was no rebel alliance. This was kind of just a bunch of people who didn't like the Empire, who are kind of just fighting. And as you kind of see both the characters and kind of like the formation of the Rebel Alliance, you kind of see like all of these additional details being built on until eventually you have these well-rounded characters. You have more of like a well-rounded establishment of how the Rebel Alliance kind of got started.
Yeah.
So I thought that was kind of cool thinking about it and how they really like match their characters with their overall point of the story.
I completely agree. I really like just Sabine's kind of character, and the more she gets fleshed out with Mandalore and like the Darksaber, and just like her family history is really cool. And just also her and Ezra's relationship, I think they could have easily been like a romantic thing, but they kind of just became like mutual respected like
I was
soldiers
gonna say, I
almost.
feel like that was a great choice to make, because it could have easily fallen into like that love trope, like, oh, you're Mandalorian, I'm a Jedi, we kind of
It's
opposites
Romeo and
attract, I don't know. but no, like they had a mutual respect for each other, and they were always, I mean, especially in the last season, I felt like they were doing a lot more missions together. And then like that, and then that led to the last episode where they knew, like she knew, and so it was nice to see how they had that respect for each other and knew what each other was capable of.
It's like the episode 6 nods of like Luke looking at R2 on the barge, and like everyone's like nodding at each other. Have you seen that Family Guy spoof?
Yeah.
Where they like they're just like nodding for like 5 minutes, just like so
the tone
obviously.
keeps on happening like that. Huh.
Yeah. And
Also, Hera mommy. Just want to say that off the bat. Come on. No, nobody else.
Oh, like she has a kid.
Both.
Oh my gosh!
I'm just saying as a joke.
Daniel's down bad. Oh my gosh. I thought it was also cool. I know we talked about this in an earlier TTTT, but like Zeb, his design is based on Ralph McQuarrie's early concept art for Chewbacca, and they just like kind of added purple tiger stripes. But like in his original drawing, he looked very much like a Lasat before they changed it to like look like the Wookiee. I liked learning that he was like a Lasat warrior, and he kind of like
he's like one of the leaders of like the warriors. Yeah.
And he kind of blamed himself for like what he thought was like the extinction of his people, but then like learning that they're okay and kind of becoming like a leader to lead them to the new world. And also just him and Callus's arc, I think is really well done.
I love that.
But before we get there, I just want to say Chopper I think's really cool. Dave Filoni actually voiced him, did like the noises for him himself.
Oh.
So
wow.
I think that's
Did
cool.
he have like the highest death count or like murder count?
Yeah, Chopper straight up before the Rebel Alliance, Chopper is just a terrorist. Like
what?
Over like 43,000 kills of sabotage. Are you kidding me?
Wow.
I saw some meme where it's like comparing like kills of like different people, and I think he has like more kills than Captain Rex or something like that through sabotage.
Oh my gosh.
Jesus.
I did see that Dave Filoni described Chopper as the opposite of R2-D2. Like R2, Dave Filoni said, is loyal like a dog, and Chopper's like selfish and like a pain in the butt like a cat. And I guess cats kill millions of people. So you heard it here first, folks.
I feel like that there's been a lot of times where, because he's just known for blowing stuff up too, like other bases and stuff.
Dave Filoni,
so I wonder if that estimation is like low. Like how many people were really in those bases?
Yeah, maybe the heinous like war crimes that were like too gruesome to put on this Disney XD show, like Dave Filoni just has in like some vault in the back of his head somewhere, and he really knows like Chopper's a menace.
Like the exact number.
Yeah.
It's like the uncut version. It's just 40 minutes of Chopper blowing things up.
Yeah, the director's cut of Rebels is just the entire series regularly, but like an extra 3 hours of Chopper just going ballistic, like blowing up the third Death Star. Did you ever hear the third Death Star? No, that's right. Chopper took it down. But yeah, so I want to talk about Callus really quick, but also I remember in Rogue One you can actually see Chopper and the Ghost in like the background of a few shots. So that's kind of cool. But Agent Callus, what do you guys think of his character?
I like when I rewatched it, because like I mean, eventually, spoilers just in case you didn't know or haven't seen Rebels, even though it's been a long time. Like how Callus was Fulcrum, and I was like trying to look for hints of that like earlier on in the seasons and stuff like that, and it's really not there. Like they don't really give you like they gave like some slight like smiles and stuff like that, but it's never anything of like you can kind of see Callus like trying to help the rebels in some way until they're kind of rescuing Zeb.
Well, I think I think that's the turning point. Like once Callus and Zeb are like stranded together on that planet.
Yeah,
I think up until that point, Ahsoka was Fulcrum, and I don't think Callus was like even thinking about deserting. But once he realized and he saw that like Zeb was rescued by his friends and like they cared about him, they like hugged him when they got him back. And then I think there's like interesting juxtaposition. I actually just watched a video about this, but like when Callus is brought back, like he is like
nobody
like
cares.
literally limps on the ship and is like, hey, like agent whatever to another guy, and the guy like doesn't even look at him, and he's like looking at a report. He's like, you have to file these by like noon or something like that. And so like he kind of realized like these people don't care about him, and he's also seeing, I think through what Zeb was saying, that like the Empire are not doing good, and I think that was what was kind of blinding him to just accept all this mistreatment. And now he's kind of like, why am I doing this? And I think that at that point is when he starts to become Fulcrum.
Yeah.
But yeah, they didn't like lead into it too much, but which also kind of led to a nice reveal, honestly. It's also kind of similar to like Zeb and Callus's relationship, kind of like frenemies. It's kind of similar to like Kanan and Rex's relationship, which I thought was really interesting,
in a way.
And also understandably very tense, because like we saw in Bad Batch, like Kanan's master was like obliterated like in front of him.
Yeah, last time we saw clones, they were just straight up murdering. God, what's his master's name? Bilbo
Baggins. Yep.
Yeah.
No.
She threw the ring in the volcano and everything.
Yeah. The most ambitious crossover in cinematic history. I was thinking actually, and Callus's arc, like kind of starting out as an enemy and then being brought around to become a like on the good side, like rebellion side. It's kind of like Zuko's arc, which is interesting because Dante Basco, the voice actor for Zuko, actually voices Jai Kell in the show. He's like one of the Imperial trainees that Ezra like frees when he like infiltrates the training facility. I thought it was kind of interesting.
Wow, I didn't know that. That's really cool.
Yeah.
And Ryder was also the same voice actor. I'm forgetting his name, but it wasn't also the same guy that did Mr. Krabs?
I believe so. Yes.
There were so many times where he'd say something. He's like, "We gotta get out of here." I'm just like, "We gotta get out of here."
Get my money.
Yeah,
Yeah, Clancy Brown.
Money.
Yeah, he's on the wrong team if he wants the money.
I'm leaving the rebels for the money.
And then what do you guys think of just the villains for the first like few seasons being like the Inquisitors and like the Grand Inquisitors? I think was this like the first time we really saw them in media, or like mainstream media at least?
I think so. I don't think that they were previously mentioned.
What do you think of the Inquisitors just as ideas?
I kind of like it, but like it kind of goes against like the whole rule of two, and especially like Palpatine and everything like that. And that's kind of like,
sorry, I was just gonna say like what we were saying earlier, like Kanan like could barely hold his own against them. If you just chuck Darth Vader at him, like Rebels would be half a season. Yeah, sorry, you were saying.
I mean, it seems like for Palpatine at least, like he was grooming Anakin to be Vader and everything, and Palpatine definitely like had fear about like Vader taking over and things like that. So it kind of did seem a little weird to me that like he would kind of allow all of these Inquisitors being like trained, and it's kind of like similar to like Sith acolytes back in like the old Republic-ish kind of thing. So that kind of like threw me through a loop. But I mean, at the same time, I did like it because you get to see more people in lightsaber duels. And
with their skinny lightsabers.
Again, like you said, if you threw Darth Vader in there, Rebels would be half a season.
Can you explain a little bit? I don't know too much about the history of like the Sith acolytes, and I know we have that show coming up, but like can you just give like a brief whatever you know about Sith acolytes?
I don't know a ton myself, but back in the old days of the Old Republic, and again, none of this is canon, so like we don't know how
much they're going to take.
Disney is going to bring in, or if they're going to change anything like that. In the days of the old Sith Empire and things like that, you had a bunch more Sith warriors. They used a whole bunch of different methods. Like they relied on like more Sith artifacts and holocrons and things like that, which is, you don't really see Vader and Palpatine doing that all that much. There was kind of the competition, which eventually led to the rule of two.
With Bane starting that? Okay. I do know a lot about Bane. Yeah. Like I love that story. So I guess the Sith acolytes were like before Bane's time then, like, which is so I think the idea with Bane was like the rule of two is that there are like a bunch of like Sith like acolytes and Sith warriors and 10 weak Sith acolytes and just like Sith members of society, whatever, would like overthrow one super powerful master, and because it was just overpower them with sheer numbers, and because of that, it was weakening the ranks of the Sith generation by generation. Because if you just keep overthrowing one guy by throwing 10 weaker guys at them, you never like strengthen yourself. So Bane destroyed all of the Sith basically and set up the rule of 2, so that it was one master, one apprentice. He was like the master, and then he would train one apprentice, and once they were trained, after like years and years, like their lifetime, once they thought they were strong enough, they would challenge their master to a duel, and like they would fight, and if the master was slain, then that new Sith was stronger and would become the master and find a new apprentice kind of thing. So that's interesting. Yeah, this does seem like it's kind of going back on that, and like runs the risk of weakening their ranks if like all of the Inquisitors and Vader would like go to overthrow Palpatine. Yeah.
And I think that you also like you see it in the battles, because I was just watching like the first time when the Inquisitors fight Ahsoka, and it was kind of like the 2-on-1, and then Ahsoka just at one point just deactivates both their lightsabers and grabs the Inquisitor's lightsaber and just turns it off. Like that's not supposed to happen. And so that kind of just like shows how weak that these Inquisitors, like they have like some skill and they like are force sensitive, and they've kind of been taught more lightsaber combat. But I think most of their like lightsaber combat and their whole design is more to like strike
intimidate
fear.
Yeah,
exactly. And it's not like they don't really have the skill to back it up versus like someone like Darth Vader who has both.
Right. All bark, no bite kind of thing.
Exactly.
Yeah, I'm really interested to see, because we have seen the Grand Inquisitor in the trailers for Kenobi. A lot of people are upset about the design of that. Like, I think Jason Isaacs, we talked about this before when the trailer came out, but like Jason Isaacs was the voice of the Grand Inquisitor in Rebels, the guy that played Lucius Malfoy in Harry Potter. That's like a really intimidating dude. But they got Rupert Friend. That's the actor that's playing him. I don't know what else he's been in, but I think he's like more of a younger guy, might have more of a stunt background maybe. So maybe they're preparing for like more stunt heavy stuff. Maybe. I don't know.
Pretty cool to see.
Yeah, what do you think's gonna happen with the Inquisitors, Matt, in Kenobi? Like, what they're gonna do with them?
And that was kind of like one of my questions that I'm like thinking about. I'm not sure, because I don't know, like timeline wise, where Kenobi is compared to where Rebels is. Like, I don't know that.
I think Kenobi's actually a few years. It's like Kenobi's 10 years before Episode 4, and I think Rebels is like 5 years before Episode 4-ish. Maybe.
Okay.
Which is weird, because like Luke's like a kid. Like I think they messed that up, but Leia's like an adult almost, like in this show. So I don't know. It's weird.
Yeah. So wait, I'm sorry. I got to make sure. So Kenobi came first before
Rebels. Because if you think like Maul and Kenobi fighting, like he's very almost Alec Guinness looking kind of thing.
Well, even just the fact that we have the Grand Inquisitor. I mean,
yeah, and the Grand Inquisitor dies in Rebels, so it has to be before. Unless he like didn't die or came back.
Plot twist. You never saw him die. You saw him fall down into an explosion. And apparently Palpatine can survive that. So
true.
So the weaker Grand Inquisitor could also maybe maybe Palpatine just caught him. Or like maybe Inquisitor did it first and Palpatine was like, yo, how'd you do that in case I need to do that for some reason later.
Oh, that'd be hilarious. I can just imagine like Palpatine was just like hiding on the
at the bottom of the pit.
You. With like a stunt mat.
Yeah. Or it's like in the cartoons where like they're like moving it around like frantically, and then like they're like, yes, I got it, and then he just like falls right next to it.
Palpatine just like, note to self, move mat 2 inches to left.
Get bigger mat. It's like Fairly Odd Parents, like Crocker could never get his like mat and his Crocker cave like in the right spot. All right, Matt, I want to now talk about what I think is your favorite character, Thrawn. I know you've got some love for Thrawn.
I love Thrawn. I think Thrawn was probably the best addition to the show. I think with like Maul being a close second and giving like more of his background story. I mean, Thrawn became a very powerful and beloved character very early on, because he's just like one of the characters that you can hate, but you can kind of like respect him.
Yeah.
It's kind of like Maul and how his character is designed. Because I mean, a lot of like before in the earlier seasons of Rebels, like especially with a lot of the combat, it's kind of more the very basic and easy stormtrooper shoot, doesn't hit anything. Like the stormtroopers, the Rebels can kind of just obliterate all of the stormtroopers. You never like see any Rebels go down or anything like that.
Yeah.
But then when it comes to like Thrawn, he's got more strategy, and so it kind of like justifies that the Empire is like this formidable force. Like they have all of these like tools and like people. And so it's not like they're just these complete like, you know, idiots running around with rifles, because then you have to like question, well, why did they stop clone trooper production when all of their stormtroopers like suck this bad? They can't stop a few pockets of rebels and things like that.
Yeah. Thrawn was originally in Legends, like in books and comics and stuff, right?
Comics.
Yeah.
Okay, and they brought him in. I did see an interview actually recently with Dave Filoni. We were doing research for this, and he said that every time like he looks for characters that he wants to bring over from like Legends into live action, like him and like now Jon Favreau, like they look for characters that they think would be interesting, but they also like first and foremost make sure that it services like the story and the purpose. And for example, like Thrawn, they thought would be a really great addition in like the strategy. They were thinking about it, like, yes, this makes sense, like kind of upping the level of strategy that the Empire has, like you said. But there's often times where they like think of like a character that they want to bring in to like live action or like some new media or even animation from Legends, and then they kind of go down the rabbit hole and they're like, well, if we change this about the character, then it would fit more. But then they kind of stop themselves. They're like, no, like we have to respect, even though it is Legends, like we have to respect to a point like that a lot of the hardcore fans know this character as like for example, like Thrawn, like as a super strategist and like everything, like even good at combat and things 10 steps ahead. If they had, for the story, they were looking for a character that like wasn't that, they wouldn't bring Thrawn over and try to like force him into that mold that they were looking for. Yeah. They would just create a new character. So I think that's a really interesting and cool way of looking at it that respects the old generation and the new fans kind of thing.
Yeah. And I don't know, like I'm not as familiar with Thrawn's backstory. Like I know a little bit, like I've seen some YouTube videos and heard like other people talking about it.
Oh, then you're an expert according to the internet then. So watching YouTube videos. According to me at least.
But so kind of like at least Thrawn's backstory, and I don't know if this has all been incorporated. I'm not 100% sure that this is 100% right, but Thrawn was like, his species was originally, they were under a threat of like some other galactic power that was kind of like attacking his homeworld. Like this power is incredibly strong. Like Thrawn's people are very intelligent and capable like warriors, but they were kind of like losing the fight. And so Thrawn's whole reason for like his justification for joining the Empire wasn't that like he believed in the Empire and like what they were doing, but he saw the Empire as like the only force capable of taking out this other force that was threatening his homeworld.
Oh, wow.
So I wouldn't say like entirely shows in Rebels, but it kind of, you do kind of see Thrawn with some more things being somewhat more blasé-faire and like sometimes like allowing the rebels to escape and whatnot. Cause like to him, he doesn't like firmly believe in the Empire's mission. At least I think it could be argued that way. I think he more enjoys the game. Yeah. And so you don't really like see him and his like, I don't want to say like arrogance, because he's able to back up a lot of what he says, but like his pride, and that kind of like fades away at the end when Ezra has him and just outwits him. Yeah. And you kind of like see for the first time that it was just like, oh no, maybe I chose the wrong side kind of thing.
Yeah. Daniel, what did you think about Thrawn?
I liked how he was blue.
Okay. But seriously, cool. You don't see a lot of good representation by the Empire. It's a lot of humans and like not really aliens in there. You know, where's freaking the Elephant Man species in the Empire ranks? Like, come on. I don't know.
Where's E.T.?
Yeah.
Real. Honestly, we need we know it's canon in Star Wars. They're on the Senate, so like, come on, we need that.
They're like the janitors. That'd be unfortunate.
Jeez. They could probably fit around places though more often. That'd be maybe they're the like lighting people because they can do the that's what like how in the Imperial starships they have like all like the lights on the side.
It's just a bunch of ETs holding their fingers like behind the wind. Like you just peel back. It's like looks like the Geonosians like on the walls, but it's ETs just like lighting up all like with their finger like wiggling their fingers around.
I mean, that would save so much money in their energy bill. This just
but
sounds like it's very cost effective.
You have to feed all these creatures though that are.
Think
about the bill with the Reese's Pieces because that's what
ETs
eat. Like think about all the Reese's Pieces they'd have to provide. They just dump them in the like ventilation shaft and it's like Plinko, like it's just Reese's and like the ETs on the top are like the more supreme like higher ranking ETs and they get all the first dibs on the Reese's, but then the bottom ETs have to eat the scraps.
No. Headcanon here. Sugar gas. Hear me out. Hear me
What?
out. You know how when Star Destroyers always get like they take one hit, like huge portions like blow up. You know,
Oh my
even if it's,
gosh,
like,
yeah.
not the-
And tons of like gas shoots out.
So imagine if you fill up the whole like spaces in between the walls with like the sugar gas. It's like flammable. It's edible for the ETs, right? So that you're able to just like.
So every time a Star Destroyer blows
I
up,
don't
it's
know.
just ETs all exploding. That's what the explosion is coming
Exactly.
from. It's not actually like. Oh my gosh,
it's
that's kind
canon
of
here. ETs are highly
tragic.
combustible,
Yeah.
which was a strategic flaw in the Star Destroyer design.
Yeah, that's what when the ventilation shaft that Luke shoots the thing down, it wasn't to like the main core, it was to like the hub of it was like to the ET break room, and they just all blew up. It was like a chain reaction.
Oh man.
We just made Luke like
He's beat Chopper now and kill Cap.
But no, Thrawn. I mean, Matt
That's it.
covered a lot of the good points there. With like, I'm pretty sure actually, I remember from some of the comics where he was more of like a savage, not like savage, but like he was more brutal from like the fighting he had to do to survive with what was going on with his planet. Seeing what kind of power the Empire had, it was interesting to see like how especially in season 4 how he was talking about power and how he
drive.
respected it and
He stays hungry. Like the ETs in the wall.
It's hard to top that.
I think
But you know what I mean though. He was a lord and fell into the trap of following power.
It's
That
a
was
trap.
What led to his downfall.
I think it was really interesting. I saw that the Thrawn's theme, the like organ music, was actually Dave Filoni's suggestion. So Dave Filoni, he actually grew up in Mount Lebanon, PA, and his dad was like an opera and classical music fan, and Dave Filoni kind of inherited and grew up with that appreciation. And according to the Rebels film composer Kevin Kiner, he said that the organ in Thrawn's theme was Dave Filoni's idea, and I think it does really well.
I thought you were gonna say, talking about Oregon, he grew up in Oregon. So
No, he grew up like pretty close to where we grew up, so I think that's kind of cool.
that's
Very
something to think about.
I think it's also just crazy, like how Dave Filoni has risen like through the ranks, and like I mean, he
Yes.
kind of started out with like the Clone Wars movie.
I actually have some history on that, and I'm going to talk about how he got that job. So Dave Filoni's story about how he got involved with Star Wars is extremely interesting.
How so?
He almost never worked on Star Wars and almost missed out on the opportunity.
What?
Yeah,
Imagine a world without Dave Filoni in Star Wars.
I know, I can't. But so he started out in animation. Like he grew up in PA, moved out to LA, started working in animation, worked on a bunch of shows, and eventually found himself working on Avatar: The Last Airbender. And he actually directed a few episodes in season 1, including like the very first pilot episode. But he talked about Star Wars all the time, like when he was over there at Nickelodeon, and like his fellow like Nickelodeon employees kind of made fun of him and would tease him for it. Until one day he got a call out of the blue from a Lucasfilm employee that like was trying to set up an interview with him to work on the new Clone Wars movie and like the show they were going to develop. And at first he legitimately thought it was like a prank, that the SpongeBob animation crew were like prank calling him from down the hall and were like setting up like a fake interview. And so he almost like, he was actually kind of rude at first. He was like, yeah, okay, like an interview with Lucasfilm, whatever. Meanwhile, he's speaking to like the secretary at Lucasfilm, and she's like, what? And then eventually he kind of figure it out like through their conversation that like she was legit. And then he almost went too far in the other direction. He started panicking, was trying to like oversell himself. He was like, oh yeah, no, I'm a huge Star Wars fan, like I'm the guy. And he said, apparently I saw an interview, he said that like I have a Plo Koon costume in my garage. And then the secretary was kind of like almost freaked out and almost then canceled the interview because she was worried he was just like this super
Like
mega
freak
fan,
or something?
like super freak.
Yeah.
But like luckily it all worked out. He interviewed, got the job, worked on Clone Wars, Rebels, now Mandalorian, Ahsoka, etc. So I'm really glad that he responded to that call.
Yeah.
Yeah, one of my biggest flex is that I have actually met Dave Filoni in person.
Yeah.
Daniel, I don't know if I told you
Nice.
about this, but like before, so like I was living in Tampa, like at the time. And so one of the things in Disney World before Disney became like the huge Star Wars world and everything like that, like it used to be just this small little area in one of the parks, and there was like the Star Tours ride, which they've now completely revamped. And then there was also like the training academy where like you as a little kid got to like get in a robe and like fight Darth Vader, which was really cool. But they would have these like Star Wars weekends, and so they would have people come and celebrities that you can like walk up and like see and like kind of like get autographs and pictures and everything. We actually almost didn't see him. We were in line to go see, I don't remember his name, but it was the actor who played Anakin in episode 1. So
Jake
like,
Lloyd?
yes, we were originally in line to see him, and his line was like incredibly long. And I just remember some guy in one of the lines was like, just started advertising for Dave Filoni. He's like, this guy's gonna be huge one day, like trust me. And so we're like my parents are like, do you guys want to go like see him? And so we're like, yeah, why not? And so like we saw him and like got pictures, got like his autograph, and I'm so mad because Dave Filoni drew like a Captain Rex picture and then signed it for me. And then I lost the notepad in one of our many moves. I am heartbroken to this day about losing it.
That's such a cool story though, dude. Yeah, dude, Dave Filoni, and it's crazy. He almost like, just even after what I was saying with, he thought Fate didn't want him to have the interview. He said it in another interview I saw, because even after he responded to that call and was preparing for the interview, he had to like fly up from LA to San Francisco where Lucasfilm headquarters is at. And the plane was like an hour late. The car that picked him up from the airport, like they were driving and something just fell and smashed through the sunroof. And so he was like, man, fate is like telling me I'm not going to get this job. And then he went to the interview, met George Lucas, and then was offered the job like on the spot. So, but also, do you remember that Plo Koon costume I mentioned that he had? Apparently,
you use that for the interview? Did you,
like, no.
Like, I'm ready.
So Dave Filoni like had a Plo Koon costume before he even got a job at Star Wars. And once he found out he got a job working at Lucasfilm, he realized he had to move from LA to San Francisco, and he was trying to like kind of downsize and consolidate a lot of his stuff. So what he did, he actually dressed up in his Plo Koon costume right before his move, and he went with one of his buddies and brought like he had like 100 Star Wars action figures, and he realized he probably wouldn't need them if he was going to be working at Lucasfilm. So he dressed up in his Plo Koon costume, went to one of the premieres, I think of episode 3, and handed out in his Plo Koon costume all of his action figures for free to little kids that were waiting in line at the premiere. So that was just a really wholesome, awesome thing of him.
Awesome. That's so sweet.
Yeah.
At first I thought you were going to say like he was put on the Plo Koon costume to save space while he was moving. So instead of like having to store it somewhere, he just was like wearing it.
He just wore it on the plane.
That's what I thought. Like imagine just like walking through customs or like the TSA, and you just see like Plo Koon, like a Plo Koon guy with like a lightsaber, and like the security guard just being like, "What is going on here?"
Yeah, it's so cool. Just Dave Filoni, man, like as a creative force, he gets Star Wars and he gets storytelling. I think that is just super exciting, and with the future of Star Wars, like him and Jon Favreau like are like such a creative force and kind of force, but it's interesting. I saw an interview, and he actually, when he prepares to like for a new Star Wars project, he doesn't watch any Star Wars media. He watches like a lot of old media that like George Lucas used for inspiration, like a lot of the old like World War II fighter jet things that like George Lucas based his or fighter planes things that George Lucas based his like aerial battles on, and older movies. Like he even watched like American Graffiti, which was like George Lucas's film before Star Wars, because he said that he wants to get out of the headspace of Star Wars. Like if they just keep watching old Star Wars stuff, they're just going to get complacent and like not innovate at all. So to get newer, fresh ideas, he has to look outside of Star Wars. So I think that's just a really cool, unique way to look at it.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great way to open up your perspective. That's the thing too. I feel like also it's like kind of like a, you know, when you try to do like a master copy of something, if you're like drawing or something like that.
And you just keep copying a copy of a copy of a copy of a copy. It's like
if
by
you keep
the
on doing
end,
that, you're going to lose all the original connections. So I feel like it's a good,
it's like
mentality
telephone
to have.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Imagine if that actually happened with Star Wars with like each like piece of content though, like
episode 7.
Like there's like little errors that keep on coming up.
What were you gonna say, Matt?
And kind of like going into like talking a little bit more about the Kenobi series is like, I'm kind of glad that like Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau, like we have like these new people who are like in charge of it, because I think the Kenobi series needs to be very carefully done in order to, because it's at this really like,
what do you mean?
I've been telling Jake this for a while, that like I think the Kenobi, and I bet it is, I bet the Kenobi series would make an excellent book, because then that would like, you get a lot of like his internal monologue and kind of his discussions with himself and everything. And
maybe they'll give him like a droid or something so that he can do that, or like maybe he'll talk to Qui-Gon and that's how he'll do his thoughts. I don't know, but yeah, sorry, you were saying,
because you can't have Obi-Wan doing a bunch of Obi-Wan things like with his lightsaber and everything, because that's how you easily get spotted, and that's how Darth Vader comes for you, and that's how you don't protect Luke. So
Yeah.
also in the show, Obi-Wan, like, man, Obi-Wan's gonna have something that like gives him severe post-traumatic stress disorder or something that like turns all of his hair white.
Yeah, because
like,
he looks very Ewan McGregor in this, very like
Yeah.
young and fresh, and in 5 years is like basically
Magneto
Alec
effect.
Guinness.
like he steps on like a really bad Lego or something, and then all of his hair just turns white.
maybe he'll get force lightninged or something like Palpatine, just like for like a second, and then he'll like just shift or something. I don't know. I would kind of hate that explanation, but like maybe honestly.
Yeah.
Maybe it just, because he's on Tatooine for so long. Like it takes a while, and then like the UV rays.
Yeah, all of a sudden it just hits. Like he wakes up one morning, he's like, ah, dang,
Yeah.
my hair is white now.
Obi-Wan tries to disguise himself by bleaching his hair blonde.
Yeah.
And then it just doesn't work out.
Yeah, maybe it's just like try to touch of gray and put too many touches in or something.
Too much touch of gray. It's all gray. It's no longer just a touch.
Speaking of like Maul, I'm gonna talk about Maul and Ahsoka, and then just that Obi-Wan versus Maul fight we do see in Rebels. I know we touched upon Maul and just that battle like between Maul and Obi-Wan. I think people complained that it was too short, but I've seen so many interviews like with Sam Witwer, who voices Maul, and Dave Filoni, and just the thought process behind that battle is fascinating to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know how much you guys know about that, but like, or
Yeah.
even our audience, but like, but you have to think both these characters have been like building this and thinking about this for like a long time. Like Obi-Wan has been thinking about this because obviously it was like a significant moment in his life, the death of his master with Maul, and then Maul obviously came back in Clone Wars, and then Maul has been like made it his life mission, and like he got a second chance on life, and he's still consumed by his hatred of Obi-Wan. Even with this second chance of life, he's using that to attack Kenobi, and Kenobi honestly feels bad for him that that's like his second chance on life has been consumed by that.
Mm-hmm.
But there's just every like story beat in that battle is so well thought out. Like when Obi-Wan and Maul face off, Maul's like very anxious, ready to attack. Obi-Wan does not want to attack. Like he's left that in his past, like in the Clone Wars. He's very much more almost like Alec Guinness, like wise. And maybe we'll see some of that bridge happening in Kenobi, which would be really interesting to see how that happens. But Kenobi is trying to like just talk things out and just discuss with Maul, and he doesn't ignite his lightsaber until Maul senses that Obi-Wan's protecting Luke. And Obi-Wan's like, well, now I can't let him get to Luke. Like, this is my mission. I have to protect him. So he first goes into the stance. This is going to be a super meticulous breakdown. Apologies if this is like boring at all. But like, so he first goes into his classic Obi-Wan stance.
The two fingers forwards.
His young Ewan McGregor
His
stance.
General Kenobi.
Yes. And then I saw Sam Witwer in this amazing interview everyone should check out with the Rule of Two podcast. But he then like kind of quickly realized, as Sam Witwer said, that like, oh, like this was my old childish way. And he kind of falls into his more Alec Guinness prepared stance. And then he shifts into Qui-Gon's old stance.
Pose.
And because he's been thinking about like how Qui-Gon was defeated and stuff. And I think Maul picks up on this and he's like, I will just do the same thing that I did to Qui-Gon, like the hit and then stab immediately. But this was kind of Obi-Wan's trick. He was kind of wanted this to happen because he knows how to counter this. So that's why it's so quick, because Obi-Wan was like 10 steps ahead, kind of predicting. Maul attacks, Obi-Wan just completely counters and slices. And in that moment, I saw Sam Witwer talk about the thought process that he was thinking when he was voicing Maul. But Maul realizes like, oh, this is not the Obi-Wan I knew. This is a man with a purpose. Like, he's not this withered old man. He is a warrior, and he's
like on duty.
He's like the best of the best still. And he's on duty. If he's here this much like power defending this kid, he must be the chosen one. That's why he asks like, is he the chosen one? And Obi-Wan's like, yes. And then Maul goes, then we'll be avenged. And you can see Obi-Wan's kind of still disappointed, because even in Maul's like last moments, he's still thinking about revenge and vengeance against Palpatine, and that's sad for Obi-Wan to see. So just that whole mini scene is freaking incredible in my mind. What do you guys think about it?
Oh, I love that scene. And again, like I've seen so many videos, and even like with Maul and kind of like his, like when he activates his lightsaber, you kind of like see his progression through episode 1 to this scene where like in episode 1, he ignites the blade one at a time. And then like in the Clone Wars, he gets closer to the in-sync. And then here in this final fight, like he has that mastered. So like he kind of like improving in his like physical lightsaber capabilities, but like he hasn't adapted his mindset because while this wasn't at the time, you kind of see it more like in this last season of the Clone Wars, where in his battle with Ahsoka, he's still trying to like regain everything that he's lost since Obi-Wan took his chance of like being part of the Emperor's plan, and essentially for Maul to become the next Palpatine kind of thing. And so he's like, just his consumption with that and like doing things the exact same way. He thinks he knows he's right. And he has like that arrogance and everything. And then Obi-Wan, like you said, just outsmarting him.
I think that's a great point, what you bring up. And I think that's what makes Maul a good villain, is because his driving force throughout all the media we see him in is that he wants to get revenge for what was taken from him in episode 1. Like every time we see Maul like pop up in a new piece of media, I always get worried that like they're gonna mess him up somehow because he's such a beloved character. But I think because every time we see him, except maybe like kind of Solo, he like his mission is to like get revenge on Palpatine and like Obi-Wan for what was taken from him, because every decision is stemming from that like internal compass. I think he still remains an excellent, amazing character.
Oh yeah, definitely. It's crazy to think about, like, we have a lot of characters who are just driven and also just blinded, literally and metaphorically, throughout their beliefs and what they actually stand for, you know?
Yeah.
But out of everybody in the series, I mean, Maul, I feel like was honestly the most blind by his rage and his...
and that's ironic, because he's the one that blinded Kanan.
Blinds Kanan.
Exactly.
Yeah. Ironic.
So, I think that's kind of poetic there in that sense.
Yeah, I feel like Kanan would not appreciate the poetry being happening. But...
I think Kanan would have still preferred to have a lightsaber not cut him in the face.
Yeah. I was trying to think of a way to segue. Speaking of lightsaber, you know who has two? Ahsoka. What do you guys think of Ahsoka?
Perfect segue. Flawless.
I'm excited to see what's going to be happening now
in the series. Yeah, just posted that they started filming. Woo.
Yeah, I'm also curious, thinking back now to like the other theories that are happening about like because of the World Between Worlds thing and like
the time travel
it's like a new timeline.
Yeah, I want to talk about
the sequels actually happened or not. You know, it's gonna be interesting to see. I feel like there is now like a secret plot that's like building up to like
tunnel.
Something is changing, and there's more opportunities for like what the Star Wars universe can be, especially with how we're seeing stuff with like Grogu and how things might be going with the cloning program.
So you think like
Mando?
Episode 6 and Mando, that universe could be a different timeline than the sequels, or they could like retcon that?
It honestly could be. I mean, after watching this,
But do you want that to happen, do you think? Like, do you think you want them to be like, sequels are like different universe, the main universe is like Mando, or like would you want that? Are you for that, Daniel?
Well, technically the main universe would be the sequels, and then this would be an alternate timeline that would be following. Right? This is the thing. I feel like there's nothing wrong with that. It would just be almost like what we are getting into with Marvel, where we're going to be getting more characters and more possibilities with how things are going. Yeah. Right?
Remember, Matt has not seen Multiverse, don't spoil anything. Matt, what do you think about just Ahsoka and the time travel element?
I think the time travel element was just the hardest part of that show to wrap my head around, because it was like, it just, in all of Star Wars, you never had anybody like you have people going across space and everything ridiculously fast, but like they never tried to touch time. And I think that every like cinematic piece that tries to mess with that manipulation of time, you have to be very careful, because now so many people have done it. Mm-hmm. And you need to like find some way to kind of make it unique, but also make it make sense.
And also not make it like readily available so it's too overpowered. They can just like undo anything, which I think they did okay here, honestly.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. No, I agree. It was something that was very different and how it was portrayed. It would have been interesting to see like what repercussions could happen if they did say bring Ahsoka back to the current moment in time, or if somehow like Palpatine was able to like do some kind of change here or there.
Do some damage, yeah.
But I think it was done well in them limiting like the actual effects of what happened. Because now we're still questioning like, hey, is it a different timeline, or is everything normal? You know, the fact that we have to like question that shows it was done in a unique way that it was presented, but it wasn't tampered with that much.
Yeah, I wanted to dive into that story beat, but just I want to quickly say for Ahsoka, I think it's really cool. We're talking about Dave Filoni. I think she just represents his whole timeline at Lucasfilm, because that was like his character he brought into Clone Wars, and now she's been in Rebels, and he's now bringing her live action. Just that whole kind of like seeing like his story as like his career at Lucasfilm also coincide with Ahsoka's story is just really cool, I thought.
And the fact that she went from such a hated character to one of the most beloved characters. Like,
yes.
That is just great story writing.
Yeah. I think it's also interesting. I have another little tidbit here. Did you know in George Lucas's original script for Star Wars, the Jedi were going to be called the Jedi Bendu, and then Lucas eventually simplified it to just Jedi.
Interesting.
Which is interesting because that concept was brought back in Rebels with the Bendu creature. So he's a creature that has like a strong connection to the Force. Like one of the original Force users, the original name was the Jedi Bendu. So I think that's cool they reused that concept. I actually I feel very proud. Like I feel like I made this connection on my own. I usually like find it online, but like I was reading, remember that coffee table book we had, Matt? The like making of Star Wars. I saw that like the Jedi were originally called in George Lucas's original script the Jedi Bendu, and then watching this, like that creature was the Bendu, and I was like, what? Like that's interesting. So I think that's just really cool.
So many Easter eggs.
Yeah, no, that's very sweet when they're able to bring back stuff like that, you know? Yeah.
We also had just other characters. Wedge Antilles was voiced by Nathan Kress, who was Freddy in iCarly.
Really?
Yeah, fascinating.
Wow.
And then also Josh Gad plays a character in Star Wars Rebels. In season 3, he's the nerdy Imperial commander that like took over Chopper for like that one episode and like infiltrated.
Wait, really?
Yeah.
What the heck?
Yeah, Olaf, man. Gotta watch what he does in summer, I guess. What do you guys think of Kanan's sacrifice?
I don't want to say it was sudden, but because there was some build to
like
it.
That episode, you could tell it was coming, but like before that, it wasn't really built to too much. Maybe like there's a little bit of hints, but like that episode, I was like, oh, Kanan's dying. Like I'd never seen it before, but I could tell like I think that Kanan was going to die at some point, but I was like, it's this episode. Like when he like starts like confessing his love to Hera and like cut his hair, I was like, yeah, he's gone. He's toast.
It was really worthwhile the way that it happened. I mean, they made it work well with the story. That's a great thing that worked out with that. With him not only being able to save the team, having a sacrifice mean something, but also being able to then also accomplish the mission that they were trying to get done.
And Zeb finding out later broke my heart, honestly.
Yeah, no, that was like, oh man, seeing him so happy because he was excited to see his team back home, like safe, secure, and then the realization of like just the devastation of like seeing Sabine like throw her helmet, and then everyone just being so distant.
Matt, what did you think of Kanan and just like kind of the finale, I guess, of this whole show?
I think that Kanan was done pretty well, so that like when you got to that scene, like it did make you feel something that he died. Like he kind of become more of like the Jedi master, not through like the Jedi's like normal and typical way, but like he did kind of find that inner peace and inner balance within the Force. Like you see it a lot throughout the show, but you also see a lot throughout the show more of his impulsiveness and his uncertainty. But then, especially when he loses his sight to Maul, just kind of he gains that metaphorical sight and like deeper understanding. And I think that's kind of what led him to realize that like, okay, this is kind of like what I have to do. And then putting himself and his like love of Hera and the team and everything to the side in order to like protect them.
Yeah. I think it's a really good point. Just like, again, I think great storytelling, like when you can apply things in stories like real life. Like I think just in life, I've been talking a lot about this like with my mom, but like things often don't go as you plan. But that's just like life, and then like having to adapt to that. And obviously, it's like a huge scale with like sacrificing yourself and also just being blinded. Like things happen in life that are very unfortunate. That might not be according to your plan, but then like learning to adapt and live with that, and like kind of take that and make it like a good thing, honestly, as much as you can. Very cool themes going on, Star Wars, all that stuff, stories. All right, so just overall, I'm going to talk about some things that you did like and then things you didn't like, just about this show overall as a whole, kind of like wrapping up because we've been talking for a bit about it. So Matt, starting out, things you just overall really liked about the show.
I did kind of like seeing how the rebellion was kind of built, and I did like seeing their setbacks and things like that. Because I know in a lot of like
that's
Star
very
Wars, you want the good guys to win all of the time and things like that. But
in a movie, you almost have to just have them keep going forward. They don't have time to show, but like in a show, you can show like it's not all like sunshine and rainbows.
Sunshine and victory.
Yeah. And I think that that's kind of like really pivotal. And that's like one of the reasons why I love Rogue One. Like I like seeing, and I know this sounds like, against everybody else, but I like seeing the rebels lose, because then it validates the Empire being this huge force, and it kind of like it further validates that when the Empire was able to be defeated, that this was a major accomplishment because they had so much strength, and like the rebels were able to do it, although it took a lot. And I think that was something that Rogue One did well, and I think that's something that kind of held the sequels back a little bit, is because you had this giant, colossal military dictatorship taken down, only for a new one to essentially rise up in relatively quick timing. Like that just, to me, didn't seem to make sense, and like how they gained all that power. But anyway, that's a whole different tangent.
That's a good point. Something
that I think I disagree with a little bit about the show is Ezra's lightsaber color change. And I know that's like a really small detail, but
no, it's fair. Like, whatever you don't like that's why we're here to talk.
But how so? Like, I'm curious to see your logic.
It goes from blue
to green.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so like you have like the
there's
blue
significance to the
lightsabers.
lightsaber colors, right?
Yes. Okay, and that's kind of what I'm going for. Like the blue lightsabers are kind of more of, I don't want to say like the warriors, because I mean all of them are supposed to be warriors, but they're supposed to be more of like actively using the force and things like that, and relying more on the physical combat and things like that, because that was a huge reason for like Anakin having the blue lightsaber. I think he's a great example.
And what does green represent again?
The stronger connection to the Force. They rely more on peace, and they'll try to negotiate first. That's why we saw Qui-Gon. Qui-Gon wanted to be more peaceful, try to come to negotiations, and they don't lead with their lightsaber as compared to blue lightsaber wielders who will be like, "Hey, I'm down for negotiations with my lightsaber." You know what I'm saying?
I think I'm gonna play devil's advocate now, and I would argue.
Yeah, go for it.
I do agree with you just overall, but I think you could argue that, and this is something I actually wanted to bring up, but I forgot about. Ezra, I think, is a very strong connection with creatures and animals, and I think he relies on that, and that's built across the whole series, like with those floating like gas creatures that eventually come back around the end, and like using animals, and I think that connection is very strong and might be a little like way that maybe like he uses the Force more and like is more powerful and willing to do that and connect with people with the Force that way versus blasting. But I agree with you, when push comes to shove, he does like run in a lot of the time. But like I think you could argue like his connection with animals and creatures may warrant a little bit of leeway, but yeah, no.
And no, I think that's a great point. That's something that I kind of forgot about, because that would be kind of more of like the Jedi counselors are typically more of like the green lightsaber users. And I guess I understand like story-wise in the show when the change needed to be made when Ezra's lightsaber was destroyed. But I think kind of more towards like the end of season 4, I think that's when you could like have more of the justification, and especially in his like final duel with Thrawn, about, I don't want to say self-sacrifice because it's not confirmed that they're dead, and the fact that there are rumors of Thrawn coming back, there may be rumors of Ezra coming back. Right. And that was when we were originally watching The Mandalorian, like at the end of, I think, the first season. I thought that a potential was Ezra coming back, not potentially Luke.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay. Interesting. So Daniel, what about you? Things you like, one or two things you liked, one or two things you didn't like?
Overall, I like for the story elements, right? I like the overall timing of how things were being like arced across the series. With that said, it's also kind of one of the things I didn't like for when it came to a lot of the earlier episodes, where it's like, okay, we're going to this planet, we got this mission, we're doing this. Next episode, okay, we're going to this planet, we're doing this, we're doing this. You didn't
really like that structure?
Yeah, I feel like it got repetitive at times, and it was just like, okay, they're doing these other missions, but it's not really like building to anything.
That was one thing I also didn't really... That's on my list, yeah. But I think it gets better like later in seasons.
It does get better. So I'm saying like when things did come out to the arcs and the major points are happening, and like how things started to build up, that's when things really started to come around, and how I, just naturally had more attention and was more attentive to those changes. Also, just the rendering and animation in general. Seeing you guys know it's my thing. So like just seeing the growth of it over the series.
Yeah.
Like
it starts out.
It was amazing
rough,
to see just better. The lighting and just how they had like extra particle effects. I'm thinking about like the mining crawler at the end, like season 4, and they're like finally getting like the atmospheric feel of the entire inside of that, that's something you can really get in season 1, to where it's like it was more like ambient light, so it's more just like general lighting all around. It was important, so you're able to see your characters and stuff like that. But it got more dramatic and more intense later on, which is supported also the darker, more serious themes that developed as the series went on.
Yeah. Just my quick thoughts, just things I did like. I liked when they started fleshing out the characters. Like in season 2, we kind of got backstories. And like in later seasons with like I said, like Zeb's episode and like his history and all that stuff. So I liked learning more about that. And again, once it started like kind of picking up, I didn't like the skinny lightsabers. But I understand why they did it. Like I was reading, and I think they were trying to base it more on Ralph McQuarrie's original concept art, which is more like a pointed, like kind of like rapier sword, like that people like fence with almost. So I think that is really cool. Just that the reasoning behind it. But I just love the look of the Clone Wars. I got so used to it. Again, comparing the two, that like it's tough to go from like those all those flashy duels to like the not so flashy duels, but I understand it made sense for the story. Yeah, overall, I think I would definitely recommend this series. I'm sad I didn't watch it like earlier, but I'm glad I watched it now, and I'm excited for Kenobi. Definitely worth a watch. After you get past like the first season, definitely picks up.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Any other final thoughts you guys had about Rebels?
One final thing that I did like, and I forgot to say. Yeah. I'm glad that it's not on a desert planet. Oh my gosh.
Yes.
Like,
yes.
It's a completely new atmosphere and everything like that. Because I mean, okay, if you think about it, you have Anakin, Luke, and Rey, who are essentially the 3 main protagonists. They came from 3 desert planets. Like,
and 2 of them were the same desert planet.
Exactly. At some point, Palpatine's got to realize, hey, maybe like desert planets have a threat of having like these really strong, powerful people.
Maybe he just goes around in the Death Star and just blows up every desert planet. Maybe that's what the third desert planet was, or third Death Star was for, just blowing up desert planets. But Chopper took it out before they could.
Yeah, no, I think I recommend it too. It's a very good series. I also second the motion. I wish I saw it sooner in more ways than one. It was really cool. Again, I always love how with Star Wars being able to, when there's different shows, different aspects, being able to see more into that universe, just in general.
Yeah, the world of Star Wars is really awesome, and I love when we get to like see more of it in a good way.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. Well, I think that concludes our little main segment here. Let's jump into the next segment. Boosh, out of the main segment. Thank you again, Matt, for joining us. Seriously, really appreciate it. It was great having you on, Star Wars expert over there. Yeah, I forgot to ask if he wanted to promote anything. I will ask him outside of this, and if he does want anything promoted, you should check it out in the description below. If it's not down there, check out some other links, because we have some cool stuff. All right, so ready for Totally Tubular Trivia Tidbits?
Yeah, hit me with them.
So, did you know that Nickelodeon didn't tell the creators of The Legend of Korra how long the show would be?
No? What?
So this is kind of like the reason why Legend of Korra wasn't really as good as Avatar: The Last Airbender, in my opinion. So Nickelodeon originally told the creators of Avatar: The Last Airbender that their new show, Legend of Korra, would only be 1 season with 12 episodes, kind of like a mini-series taking place with the next Avatar. So with that in mind, the writers of the show wrote a fully contained story for that 1 season with no intention of continuing after. So that's why like the villain dies, the protagonist gets her love interest, she fully connects with her Avatar spirit. Her story is kind of like very complete at the end of that 1 season. But then after they like had already kind of written it, Nickelodeon renewed the show for a 2nd season. So the writers had to kind of write themselves out of their corner they had backed themselves into and kind of create new villains and new stories. It was tough to get Korra out of that like perfect ending. So they created like a new villain for her and had to create like bigger and better challenges, which is why we got like spirit bending and stuff. And it kind of derailed from like what we'd normally see in Avatar: The Last Airbender. They didn't have that like overarching story that Avatar: The Last Airbender had, which kind of made it what it was. And since they didn't have like that plan from the beginning, it didn't do so well. And they had to keep coming up with like new villains for every season. And the production was just spread incredibly thin. The turnaround was crazy for their schedule. They were like working on ideas for season 4 while still producing and working on season 2 episodes. And this kind of destroyed the creators from being able to like effectively use that long form storytelling, which is why each season of Korra was so disconnected from one another. So hopefully the new projects that they're doing will do better.
Or more connected and holistic.
Yeah.
I mean, like Korra was great. It just didn't have the same pacing as the OG.
Yeah.
And you could tell that in the storytelling. But it doesn't take away from what happened with the show. It's still a great show.
Yeah, definitely. I love it. We talk about this right after with Matt, but like I am watching Korra season I like watching the whole thing, but I'm on season 3 now, rewatching it because I actually watched that with my roommates, like and Matt included, back like last year in college for the first time. We really liked that show, like when it first came on Netflix. It was actually interesting. I was reading about the history of Korra when I was prepping for that TTTT, and apparently they did like the first season, 2 seasons released like on Nickelodeon, but then they did the last like season and a half, I think, like was released just to the web.
Yep.
I did not know that. I thought that was really interesting.
I knew that. I think it was something weird with Nickelodeon, and I don't know if they like split off Nickelodeon or not, or if it was some weird like funding thing going on.
Yeah.
Things that cause a change there. I know that for sure.
All right. I have another TTT, but it's kind of like more broader. It's not like about a specific thing. And I think it's actually really interesting. And I don't know if you know this one.
Okay.
Why do filmmakers use blue lights to showcase it's nighttime during a scene?
Why?
There's actually a scientific reason that deals with how humans perceive light rays. Obviously, like in real life, the night often does not have lights like illuminating the environment, but cameras can't pick up enough detail if it's like completely pitch black and there's literally zero light present during a scene. So to solve this problem, early filmmakers looked at the color spectrum, and on the spectrum, the color blue has the shortest wavelength and is the last color the human eye can visually comprehend before it like fades into what we perceive as black. So because blue is so close on the spectrum to black, we started lighting night scenes with blue lights. And because it was so close, people over hundreds of years of filmmaking, audience started perceiving and just like we're trained to associate blue light with night scenes. So now in most films, we think of night scenes and moonlight as blue. So I thought that was just really cool.
That's very interesting, and that makes a lot of sense. You know, it's nice seeing a combination of science and
science and art,
you know?
kind of mixing. Yeah, I love that kind of stuff. Yeah, that was it. Ready for patron shoutouts?
Yeah, hit me with them.
Cue the epic Star Wars music. Boosh, who got patron Lori, Frank, Rick, Lisa, Evan, Tony. Thank you so much for pledging the tier. Gives you the shout out if you like to support us over on Patreon. Link is down in the description. You get the audio episode early before everyone else. You get a role in our Discord that we record in, and we chat with you about stuff. We talk to you about like merch. We have next week. We actually have a big deal coming. It's our 100th episode. Thank you to everyone that's been with us.
That is crazy,
like
dude.
Through 99 episodes, and even if you come along the way at any part, this is your first time, welcome, hello, thank you. But yeah, super excited to be here for 100 episodes, doing it with my best friend Daniel. Thank you, Daniel. That sounded so sincere, but I meant that sincerely. Like seriously, I do appreciate it.
I know you because you're my best friend. So like but no, dude, seriously, like as a comment before we even get into that, like you have been putting a lot of work into this. I feel like this is important for people to know. Is like you do all the editing for this, you do all the social media, you've been carrying this, and it's been growing like crazy. And honestly, you should feel proud of the work that you've done and where things are at right now and where they're going to, man. It's really been amazing just being able to, like, you've made this environment for us to be able to just, you know, be able, even across the country, be able to talk to each other and just talk about the stuff we love, you know? So
thank you,
I want to thank you, man.
Thank you. I seriously really appreciate that. And I am the one that I seriously think I should be thanking you, because I have to feel bad, like just dragging you into this like every week, and like making you do stuff. But I do think it's a fun way for us to like stay connected, and hoping to like keep growing it so that people can feel like it's a place that they can celebrate storytelling, and maybe like have like kind of a community where people can talk and about just like stories they're excited about. That's kind of like the goal. I've been looking into like maybe a Facebook group or something. I don't want to stretch myself too thin. I want to like grow it and be able to do stuff, but I don't know. I'm very excited for the future also. But thank you. That seriously does mean a lot to me. But yeah, are you ready for review/comment shoutouts?
Yeah. What we got?
So we have a new comment from Thomas Piette. Again, he commented last week and I didn't know how to pronounce his name, and I'm sorry if I'm butchering it again. But he commented again on our Multiverse of Madness review from last week. He said, great show, and that he loved the movie. So thank you. Appreciate that. I'm glad that you appreciate it or like the show. Yeah. That is everything I had. Are you ready for the outroduction?
Yes. Tell me when.
Who? When?
I had to test it. I'm like, is he going to say it? We just talked about what we want to talk about, and now we're done. Blah.
I was just cosplaying as an owl, you know? Just kidding. No, but yeah, thank you everyone seriously for being here for almost 100 episodes now. Super excited to see where it goes from here. And no matter when you hop on this train, we're glad you're here. See you next time for episode 100. And Kenobi! Goodbye!
Kenobi! See ya.